And then we're going to define that region and get into how we get into set each one of these parameters and why these parameters actually exist. And how do we get these actually in there and see the population between the description and the quantities or whatever we're trying to change here. So these are some of the things that we can actually see. We're going to also get into how to set up a simple versus a 2x2 region, where we can actually define how we want to actually see, or what I consider a 2D region, which gets to be more complex. Because now we're going to look at driving parameters coming out of the model to drive these particular entities that we see in the family table itself. And there's a lot of different things that you can define. One might be the fact of using cost, one might be the fact of using material, and things like that. So we're going to go through some of these things and dive down deep into the parameter and how they can be set up and kind of break some of these parameters down so people know how to use these so that they can actually use the best of what I consider out of the solid modeling that we can actually do, because we can populate a lot of these things automatically. And these are some of the things that we can actually see. We can also get into defining the parameters themselves within the part and within the assemblies. So we can kind of look at how these actually look. You can actually bring them into the family table and allow them to actually come through. So we should see a family table that looks like this, where we have maybe an FC group 3 and so on and so forth. And we'll kind of take a look at this family table, and we'll insert this whole table right into the drawing. Several times that I've had here in the last 4 to 6 months here is that a lot of students that come through my classroom here say, you know, family tables are nice, but it should be nice to actually get them onto a drawing. And how do you get them onto a drawing? And these are some of the things that we're going to cover today in regards to what we're going to go through, because it is really, really interesting, because there's a lot of things you can do here. As you can see here, we have a verification, which is actually right here. We can also verify this by the use of a configuration setting called Verify on Save by default. So every time you hit Save, it verifies this family table. So therefore, if you have a PDM system and you check it in, and you do not have any asterisks in that family table, it goes in.
Hey, Bill, can you speak up a little bit, please? Some people are having a hard time hearing you.
So, okay, let me see if I can turn this up a little bit more. Is that better?
Yeah, at least on my end.
All right. So these are some of the things that we can actually see and get into. The verification is really crucial in regards to the PDM system. And so these are some of the things. Family tables should not be left with asterisks, because when you put them into a PDM system, they become wildcards. And so therefore, you can copy a lot of that. And things can result as problems within PDM. But as long as those two conditions are set and put in place, it pretty much is pretty much stable all the way through. So I've not seen any real problems in PDM Link as long as those two have really been met. And there's some other configuration settings you can do to actually help you out in regards to PDM Link, but that's not what this is all about. This is in regards to family tables being given into drawing. And as you can see up here, we're going to have some parameters that come into play here. So what does this component mean? What does this component? And so on and so forth. So we're going to turn things on. We're going to change diameters. Maybe we're going to change some characteristics. Do these update automatically? And how do these work coincide? And it's kind of neat to see some of the characteristics of what we're going to actually do here. So these are some of the things we're going to look at. Now, one of the big things that we have that is new for Creo 2 is what we call a simple table creation. And this table creation is something that pops up when we go underneath the Table tab and we say Found in Table, or we actually select this table that's actually sitting right here. This little dialog box drops down, and then we can take our left cursor and then kind of drag it to our arrangement that we actually have. Something similar to what we have over here, where I have a 2x2. So these things here, this 2x2 is equaling what that actual, the highlighted areas are. And as I drag my mouse to it, what will happen here is it'll actually change the number of rows or columns that I actually have. So it's kind of neat. And we can get into some of the characteristics there. Then we're going to look at creating our, what we call a complex, what we call a 2D repeat region. So repeat regions are something that you can actually get into and put parameters within it and actually develop these. So that as you do this, all this data comes directly from the model. So things like ampersand date or whatever that you see within your formats. These are what we call parameters, and these are coming in from the model and actually being updated right as we move through and regenerate every time we go through. So these are some of the things that we can actually do within the table itself. For those people that haven't seen this before, we have two regions, both the model tree and the drawing tree, and you can kind of see that we've changed Creo 2 in regards to the drawing aspects of it. And quite frankly, honest with you, in regards to the table characteristics, I like it too as well. And I think it's a little bit more intuitive of what's actually going on in perspective of it. But everybody seems to have, and this, I get asked this question all the time in class, what's the difference between a simple region and a 2D region, and how do you set those up? And that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to get into there, and we're going to set some of these parameters and see what happens to our table and what goes on there. So these are some of the things that we can look at. And I'm going to get into, I've got the table already sitting there, and we're going to build another table just like that so that you can see what's going on. So these are some of the parallel conditions that we actually have. So those things are what we're going to actually do. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and come over here, kind of get off my slide here. I'm going to kind of minimize everything here and get down into some conditions here of where I've launched the actual software itself. So here we have Creo 2 in its perspective. And some of the things that we actually have here are, as you can see, kind of a format, tables. You can see everything coming live. And then we've got a table sitting down here. Now, each one of these has a tab going process in the drawing mode. And the table is truly the table. So if we want to do anything relative to the table, we have to switch to the table. Now, there are some things that you can actually do relative to this, and things that we want to actually set in place. Are we limited to just one model or many models? Well, we could actually have a lot of models associated with this drawing. And in this particular case here, we're going to build a particular fuel cap that I have up here on the screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a table. And as you can see, there's a couple different ways that we can actually do it. And I'm going to kind of show different conditions. So we have what we call a TBL file where we can actually see the balloons and everything populate. But before we do that, we're going to kind of get into some of the regions and get into the setup. So when I look at this particular condition, and I'm just going to take and highlight this for right now, and I'm just going to take and delete this. So I'm going to start as if I'm going to start brand new with a family table and kind of create what I actually have here. So if I look at things here, I'm going to go over here, set the table, and notice right away it drops right down. And then I can come over into here, and notice with my cursor, I can kind of go over these two, and then if I select on it, now I can bring it in here, and now I have my 2x2 table. So these are some of the things that we can actually look at. Now, that being said, that we actually have that, we can go over here into the repeat region. And let's talk about a little bit about the repeat regions. So we can add a region. So what happens here is we've got two different kinds of conditions. We can do a simple, or we can do a complex. And what I want to do here is I'm going to set up another table. For right now, I'm just going to say done. But before I do that, notice I've got relations, I've got summations. I can kind of get into some of the conditions where I can search by regions, I can filter anything that's a duplicate. All that can actually happen. I've got attributes relative to that particular types of conditions, and then I've got model representations and so on and so forth. But the most important ones are these two down here, and that's called the update tables and the switch sims. So if I switch sims, if I hit update tables and then switch sims, notice it goes back to its form that we actually have here. So we have some things that are going on relative to a family table. And these are coming from parameters, and we'll see how to set these up. If I go back to update tables and then switch sims, notice it repopulates it exactly the way we want to see it. So that being said, I'm going to start off with another table here. So I'm going to create another table, and this time I'm going to go to a 3x2. So I can select over here. Now I've got a 3x2 type table here. If I go into the repeat region, and now what I can do here is I can add a region. And notice the fact that I've got simple and 2D. And with a simple region, I can select it. Notice the fact that I can grab this box, it highlights it, and then I can come over here and grab this box. And then I can do an update table, switch sims to see that this actually develops my repeat region. And what the repeat region is a bunch of parameters that are driven from the model. And that model gets to the point of where we can look at certain things. We can add them, we can kind of filter, we can change them, we can sort them, we can paginate them. We do all kinds of different things with this. And this is what we learn in the production drawing class. And I like to really break this particular module down. We will get into what we call user-defined parameters, such as cost, maybe you make or buy it, maybe whatever we do. Those are some of the things that we can actually get into. So those are some of the things that we can see what's going on here. So that being said, we can say done, and then I want to come down here into this region here, and then I'm going to right-click on it. Notice, and this is the most important thing about the parameters, there's what we call a report parameter that's going to pop up here. Now, with that being said, notice the fact that these are all what we actually need in regards to a lot of the things that we see parameter-wise from the model. Notice we've got assembly, we've got diagram, we've got family table, we've got harness, we've got layout, we've got material, we've got members, we've got models, we've got manufacturing, yes, and so on and so forth. And then we've got a report and weld assembly. In this case here, I'm going to hit report, and then I'm going to hit index. So what will happen here is if I want to actually do this, this would be like a simple 2DL file where I have quantity, table, and so on and so forth relative to that. Now if I go over to the next parameter box, I can right-click on it, hit report parameters, and I can go into assembly, member, and then name. So look at this. Let's kind of break this down. We can go into a user-defined condition. So things like maybe we want process, maybe we want to make or buy. So these are some of the things that we can actually add to this. In this case here, I'm going to add name, but notice the fact that you've got parameter, you've got types, you've got all these different kinds of things. Let's say, for instance, I go into the parameter here. Notice the fact that it's got name, unit, and value. So these are some of the things that I can do. If I want to go back, I can go back up to where I actually was. If I want to go into some of the parameters, so I can go into this parameter where I'm in the name unit. So these are some of the things that we can actually do and get up. And everything is defined, and I have everything laid out in a sheet form where you can actually get to know each one of these parameters. And that's what we do in the production drawing class. And in this case here, I'm going to hit number name, and we're done with it. And then I'm going to come back over here and get the last cell, and we can kind of see what's going on here. So I can go into report parameter, and then I'm going to report quantity. Or I can go into what? Relations or levels or index. So in this case here, I'm just going to hit quantity. So these are some of the things that we can do within the region. Now, the way that I have this set up, this is set up for an assembly, not an actual part. This is what we're working on right here is a part. So that's the simple form of a repeat region. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get into what we call a complex 2D region. And that 2D region is something that a lot of people struggle with. And I have to agree, unless you've gone through it a couple times, it really gets to be the point of where you have to know where everything has to lie to set up that 2D region. And that 2D region is very, very crucial in regards to its setup. So, that being said, we'll look at some of the characteristics, and I'm going to go back over here to this table here. So I'm going to set up a region, I'm going to add a region, and this time I'm going to move from simple to 2D. And here's where we've made some simplification in Creo 2, which is a wonderful thing, to actually make this 2D region. Previous to this release of Creo 2, we had to actually select the whole entire area, and then hopefully we didn't double-click in one of these 4 boxes accidentally, and then the region would never work. In this case here, we can simply just pick the 3 regions that we want to add the parameters to, which is really nice. So I can come down here and I can add it to this region. As you can see, it turns red. I can come up here and hit this region, and then I can hit this region. So it takes everything together automatically and says, I see a 2x2 coming. Oh yeah, that's right. We've got to go all the way around this for the full box of parameters. So these are some of the things that we have to do to set this up. So with that being said, and getting in place, we can actually say done. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select this. And now, if I go into report parameters, notice the fact that I can go into family. And that means fam means family. So that's a family table. I'm going to drive it from an instance, so it's going to see that particular instance. And then I'm going to put in here, notice the fact that I can put parameter, name, whatever the value is, PTC common name, or whatever it is. So you can play around with these parameters however you want. In this case here, I'm going to put name. So family instance name. So what should that actually do? Well, if we go over here and we take a look at this, and we open this particular table up, notice the fact that we've got a generic sitting here. And if we come over here and get into the actual family table, we can kind of see what's going on here. So I'm going to kind of try to expand this on out. So notice the fact that we've got a fuel cap, many fuel caps. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we make fuel caps in our production line. So we're going to change the number of grooves, the number of bridges, and yes, we can actually, the number, as we want to see this, number of bridges, the actual pitch, and then the outside diameter. So we're going to change the size as well as change the pitch and change some of these variables. It's kind of neat. Now, these are some of the things that can happen to us. When we actually add things, we can also verify. So it says verify family table instances. So what this does is it goes through and regenerates all this. And as you can see, if you built a normal family table, all you're going to get is this F367, F1510, P17, P44, and so on and so forth. And what will happen is, if we haven't gone into those particular features and we name them to grooves, ridges, and number of grooves and number of bridges, and outer diameter as well as thread pitch, then it gets confusing to us. And because we might have P44 of an assembly versus P44 of a part, and it gets to be a confusing mess. And assemblies are probably more so cumbersome than there actually is a part, because the part can go into a lot of these things. And actually, what you look at here is everything below this line that's actually the very first vertical line here, is what we call an instance. So FC, fuel cap, groove 3, fuel cap, groove, ridge 3, and so on and so forth. So you can see that they're turning on and off certain features. And those are what we're going to want to try to take and put into a table on our drawing. So these are some of the things that we are really crucial with. And this is where I love family tables, because family tables are our ally in regards to functionality of moving through and populating the drawings properly. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And I'm going back into the drawing, which we can actually see here. And as you can see here, we've got some characteristics. If I go back to repeat region, update tables, switch sims, so I've got my first characteristics sitting here. And now I'm going to go up to this top box here, and I'm going to right-click on it and hit Report Parameter. In this case here, I'm going to hit Family Table, I'm going to hit Instance, then I'm going to hit Parameter, and then I'm going to hit the name. And that name associates us with what? Yes, that's right. The actual parameter that's coming from the model. So as I take P44 and rename it or whatever I'm going to do with that, that name is going to come across and populate, hopefully, the top of that table. And that's what's actually going to happen there. And even though that I have it as a 2x2, all this information on the family table is going to cause this table to grow to the number of columns it needs to automatically. So these are some of the things that we can actually do and get into. And with that being said, we can have a lot of functionality and things like getting into a situation where anything that we have in that family table will come transparently across by that value. So we need to actually put in one more parameter here, and that's the name here, to match what we need up here. Now, our very last one, which is our box down here, I'm going to right-click and hold, and the key is I've got to right-click and hold to get this to happen. And I hit a Report Parameter again, and I'm going to hit Family, Instance, and then I'm going to go to a parameter, and then I'm going to go to a value. I could go to a unit, or I could go to an ID, but in this case here, I'm going to go to a value because I want that value that's coming from the family table to come transparently across.
Bill, your sound's starting to cut in and out a little bit again. Can you kind of, I don't know if you can speak a little louder or get a little closer to the speaker in the computer?
Yeah, I don't know. Hold on one second here. Let me see. I think maybe my cord's coming out of the wall here. Is that better?
Sounds a little better. Just keeps it kind of cutting in and out.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. But those are some of the things that we actually have here. It must be our connection to, because we here in the training room, it must be a connection to the outside world. But I just pushed it in, and it seems like it's a little bit better. I can hear you at least a lot better. So thanks for letting me know. So that being said, we can do some things here. If we go into Update Tables, we can go into the Update Tables here, or we can go into the Repeat region. These are the same Update Tables. And if we do an Update Tables, aha, look at that. Look at that. That table just grew. And now, if we go into Switch Sims, look at what actually happens. Oh, yeah. So, and then we can say Done here, and then I can grab this table and kind of move it over here because I got this other table that's actually kind of coming through here. So when I look at these kinds of conditions and I see what's going on here, notice the fact that these tables here should result what I actually have over here in the actual table itself. So let me go ahead and grab the part here, kind of open it up, and take a look at what we have relative to the family table. So if I take this family table and I kind of slide this alongside, and then I kind of slide this over here to the side, you kind of see like a lot of the conditions that are going forward. So these are some of the things that we can actually do relative to this. So we can see that, yes, we have the rules here for this particular condition. And as these conditions lie, notice we're turning some of these things particularly on or off, depending upon what we're going on. Plus, on top of it all, at the same time, we're changing the number of groups. So you can see that these get compiled in regards to the outer diameter, the ridges, the thread pitch, and so on and so forth. So we can actually take this and look at that directly. So these are some of the things that we can do within the family table. Now, one of the other things that can actually happen here is we can actually take this into an assembly. And we can say, okay, let's take this assembly and make that. So that's what we're going to do here next in regards to some of the parameters and look at what we do with a table. So if we already have a table already set up, like what we have here, so this is matching each other. So we've got something that actually looks pretty close to our repeat region or our table. So if I go into the table itself here, notice the fact that we can actually put anything in here, or we can go into the repeat region, and I like to actually go into some of these things. So if I go into attributes, or I go into flat cursive, or I go into one of these are all going to be some of the things that we can actually do. So what I got to do to activate these things, if I want to actually do an attribute, I have to come down to the repeat region. Aha, there it says, do I want any duplicates, no duplicates, everything else that I have. If I say no duplicates, and I play flat or recursive, and notice the difference, I can change this, and then I can say, okay, done, and now it changed the whole table the way I want it to read. So it's kind of cool in regards to those types of conditions. I can also come up here and hit the region again, and then look at that particular region itself. So if I select this region, hit flat, or maybe I'm going to take a filter and add it to this particular region. Now I can do it by rule or by item, and I can add anything I want. So this is kind of cool in this perspective. Also, I can take and put comments in here. And the best thing of all, especially when you're actually doing something like cost. So if you had a table called cost here, you could select it, and now you could add whatever you wanted to do to some of those particular conditions. So if I wanted to add something, do it by name, by text, or whatever. So if I get here, family table instance, boom, here's the instance, and now I can actually get into that particular name. If it was cost, put cost in here, and now I could actually see all my different costs that were actually added to that. And then it would actually sum that particular condition if it related to the cost that was actually there. So these are some of the things that are kind of neat in perspective. I like to actually do this because a lot of times you can do this with the cost and burden rate. You get your total cost for each one of the conditions. Very cool. Also, let's go over and jump on, and we're going to go back into a layout here. We're going to add, you say done here, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new sheet here. So notice the fact that there's parameters here, like your name. That means that it's a smart template, and therefore I've got things like ampersand date, ampersand model, modeler, or maybe somebody who actually created it. And these parameters start to mean something. So if I put in my initials, we can actually see that it has actually populated this drawing with my name right here. And look at what else happens. It puts the date down. It tells me the size and the models that are actually coming from the template. So these are all some things that we can do when we set up in the production drawing class. And these are some things that we deal with in that particular condition. So with that being said, I can set up a drawing model. So I want to add, notice there's no more drawing models here. I want to add a drawing model. So if I go back here and I say, okay, let's take this engine assembly, and I want to put this actually in here. I'm going to take this engine, and I'm going to put this down here as the master rep. And so now I actually have an engine assembly. So I can set my model equal to my engine. And now I can put the general view, and now I'm going to put it right here. And as we can see here, I can put it as an isometric view. And we can see what's actually going on there relative to that. And let me just move this over to wireframe and to apply, and there we go. And so those are some of the things they do here. Also, at the same time, what we can do is we can get in here and get into properties, view display, view states, explode, and then if we have something, maybe we have something that's exploded or whatever, we can actually do a customized explode state or whatever, and we can kind of see what that actually is. So we can move over and actually have an exploded assembly there. Now, we could actually go back if we wanted to, select that, right-click, properties. If we don't like the way that actually looks, we can go back in here and get into display, and we can go back to, maybe we want to go back to shaded so we can see all these parts. So there's all our parts. All right, well, one of the big things that we actually have here is the table, okay? So how do we get this table in here, and what's the power behind the table once we get in here if we've got a file that's already set up in it? So if we get into the table itself, notice the fact that we have a bill of material table itself. So we can see what's actually going on here relative to that. And if we do this, we've got some conditions where we can actually put some characteristics behind it. So this is one kind of table that we could actually put in. The other kind of table we could actually put in there, if I grab this and I go up to, let's say I go up to, see if I've got another table here. So this table here can be set up in so far as a different kind of table. So as I'm going through here, I can build repeat regions and get into things that I really want to. Now, superimposed upon that, if I already have one that's already existing here, I can go into table and then let me grab another one here. That's a little bit more on the condition of where we want to actually be here. Let me just get into one of the folders here. Go back over here and grab this. So what I can do here is I can grab one of these, and then if I grab this one, notice the fact that if I grab this one, it now has a whole different type of condition. Wow, look at that. So how did that exist? And so we see this table here, and it says, item 1 says we've got volt 518, and there's a quantity of 2. We've got 3 over 528, 1 connecting run, 1 crankshaft, 1 cylinder, 2 bearings, and so on and so forth as we go down this particular list. So if we go back into the repeat region, and we update tables and switch sims, notice we've got report, index, assembly member name, and report quantity. So this is what's actually being driven from the family table, or actually the assembly in this case, and it's creating a table that resembles what we want to do for our bill of materials. So these are some of the things that we can go back and forth with. And this is what I mean by these are very, very, very important to actually know where that repeat region actually is, because that repeat region will be single, whatever you want to put in here. Notice in this case here, it's single because it's only one box, and it's got these names, items, and quantity. That's something that's always going to be there, so you can actually do it. So when I go back to update tables and switch things back, it now fills it out, and it's done. Now what I can do here is I can actually take and create the blooms, and I can go by view, I can select the region that I want, and now I can select the view, and there's all my different balloons that quick. And it's really kind of cool in perspective of automation. And this is what I really like about these particular things. And so this idea behind the tables itself is something that you can play around with, and you can actually get into where you can do just about anything that you want to get these kinds of conditions. And here again, and if I can go back into some things here, if I go back up under update tables, repeat region, and switch them back here, notice the fact that I can add a region, I can make it simple, go from here to here, and that whole region comes about. I can say done. And then maybe something like to the order of, I'll create another one here where we can get into a region. Well, let's go in here and add some parameters itself, and we can take a look at some things here. So we have to really pay attention to where we're actually selecting, because that report parameter is our most important thing to consider. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and report index. And then down here, I'm going to do the report parameters. And notice I can do report. Sorry, let me go back up again. Let's go to assembly. And then if I go to member, and then I go to name. Now, there's all kinds of things I can do here. I can tell it's units, I can tell the material that I actually had here, or whatever it is. So these are some of the things that we can actually look at. In this case here, I can go after parameter again and see I've got name or whatever, or unit or whatever. So if I go into some of these conditions, we can see what actually happens. If I don't want that particular condition, I can go back up and put in some of the things. A generic representing the family table itself again. So if I look at generic, now I've got all of these things that can come out of the generic. I've got a type, I've got a unit, I've got everything else that's going to come from that particular table. If I'm using anything for piping, I can get into do some of those things. So these are something that really works in that perspective. So in this case here, I'm going to use name. So that pretty much does this. And this one over here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in assembly, number, and then let's see if I can get into type here. And then this last one here is if I go into here, I can go into report. So now if I go back in here and do a repeat region, I'm doing update tables and switch settings, now you can see what's actually gone on relative to that. So these are some of the things that we can actually do and get into, where we can actually change whatever we want. Do we want a part? Do we want assembly? So it tells us exactly what that type actually is. So it's kind of cool from that perspective. So there's all kinds of things that you can actually do. And this is where I like to get kind of outside the book and get into how to set these things up. Maybe we want to get in there and sum some of these conditions and so on. So there's some really good, powerful things here. Also, in regards to the table itself, we can move the table. And our balloons are, you can select them. So one of the things that you can actually do here is that if you go under the condition, or if you want to take and move one of these balloons, you can actually take and move these around. So these are some of the things that you can actually get into. In the table itself, you can slide things like this and this, just to get things away from the borders if you want to. So those are some really neat things here. So that being said, I just want to take some time to say, hey, look at there's all kinds of things that you can do and develop. There is no limit to what you can do with it. I love them. I wish I would see more companies doing more with these. You can get into where you actually have a layout. So if I go into something where I have a layout itself, so if I go back into the region, go back into switch this, maybe I have a region up in here, and I want to put something like, well, we can go and get some conditions where maybe we want to actually move some of this stuff. So we just go back into the report. Maybe I want to put in here layout, parameter, and then maybe there's a layout that I'm associated, or maybe a unit or a value. So there's all things. So I can tie a layout to this particular drawing and then declare that to an assembly and now bring all the stuff together. So there's no limits. And this is where I believe that this is what we pay for the high-end geometry and geometry creation for the high-end software. It's this kind of functionality that can help you bring great drawings, great parts, great assemblies, and also the way that you build your organization around it. So those are some very good things here. So that being said, we're about 10 minutes from closing things out here. Are there any questions?
I got some questions, Bill.
Okay.
Are you ready? How to lock a bill of material table at a preliminary release so when anything's added later?
Sorry, run that by me one more time.
How to lock a bill of material table at a preliminary release so that anything added later goes on end of table, and anything removed will leave an index gap or a through line.
Okay. So that usually takes the use of two things. When you lock this particular family table, usually it's tied to a PDM system, and you have to actually hit save. So every time it keeps the report in that type of condition. And if I'm understanding the question properly, you can check it back in, and then it will, the next time you change it, it'll bump the rev history in regards to that, and then you can make the changes that you need to do with the PDM system to actually make the new changes. So if I wanted to add or delete something, I could. So something to the order of, let me just cancel this out here and kind of move these things over here. So if I go back into the repeat region here and I do an update tables and bring this back here, and let's say I come over here and I take this front engine block part, and I open up this assembly here. Actually take this assembly, and let's say I take this engine block front. Now I'm going to actually take and suppress this. So maybe this is going to affect everything. Maybe I'm going to some of the options. I can say suppress, and I've got some things to either suppress or suspend, and so on and so forth as I go through this and down we actually go in perspective of this. And then I can say okay to this. And there's going to be things that you're going to have to deal with as it goes through. So these are going to be some of the things that you're going to have to work with when you check these back in and out. So those are some areas that you actually have relative to that. So these kinds of things where you can take this and maybe suppress this part here.
Phil, I think you came up plugged again. It's getting really choppy.
Sorry if we're losing connection here. One more time. Hello? Jason?
Yeah, it's still really choppy. Yeah, yeah, that's better.
No, it's the phone here.